Hey y'all, welcome back to Made It Out. Today's episode is with an actress that you may recognize from Inventing Anna or Grey's Anatomy. It's Alexis Floyd, and we originally planned to talk about her work with the Trevor Project, which is an organization that helps with suicide prevention for the LGBTQ community. She's in crisis management for them. But the conversation took so many surprising turns. We talked about her life, her family life growing up. She comes from a military family. She has a queer parent that she found out about later in life. We talked about her own queer journey and feeling queer enough. There's so much in this episode. I love it so much. I always love when a conversation kind of goes rogue and turns out so much better than I even expected. So you're gonna love it. Thank you for being here. Season 2. Finding affordable, accessible mental health care can be really tough. And even though we try to spread the knowledge through our What Are You Working On in Therapy segment, I know you sometimes just need your own space with someone to talk about your own specific needs, and Rula is on a mission to make high-quality mental health care from a licensed professional easy and affordable for everyone. Thousands have already trusted Rula to support them in their journey toward mental health and overall well-being. Head over to rula.com/made to get started today. After you sign up, they're going to ask you who sent you. So please support our show and tell them that our show sent you. Go to rula.com/made and take the first step toward better mental health today. You deserve quality care from someone who cares. There are some things in life that are okay to be a total crapshoot, like trying a new milk in your coffee, an impulse buy off of an Instagram ad, or trying a new takeout spot. But finding the right doctor should not be a crapshoot. And with ZocDoc, it's not, because you've got more options than you know. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click instantly to book an appointment. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/made to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/made. ZocDoc.com/made. Here we go.
Here we go.
I'm so happy to have you here.
Man, thank you for having me.
Of course. We met recently.
Yes.
On the Reproductive Freedom for All bus.
What a magical place to be.
We were like in Arizona, yes, going to different rec centers.
Wow.
Hanging out in the bus.
Hanging out on the bus.
I'm so happy we met you, and I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you.
I didn't know we were both from Texas.
Yes.
Well, no, your family's from Texas.
My family's from Texas. My entire dad's side is there. So big part of my childhood. Yeah.
And something we haven't really talked about on this podcast a lot is military families. Mm-hmm. And I know that's the type of family you come from. So I want to get into it all. I want to know, what was that like? What was your upbringing like?
Totally. And you know, my dad did not serve, but both of my grandparents did.
Okay.
And so when I went to Texas, that was very much still the way our family gatherings were sort of structured, or even just how we related to one another. There's a sense of formality and like protectiveness that has a positivity to it. I think where it becomes challenging is when you internalize that sort of systematic way of relating, and then it makes being self-expressive, especially for someone like my dad, who's the youngest of 5, Black military family in Texas, discovers that they're gay and does not feel like that fits the framework that makes the family function, which is another way of saying makes him safe, especially in Texas. Mm-hmm. So though I didn't know my dad was gay growing up, it was very clear to me, especially when we went back home, that like there's a certain way of like navigating the family dynamic that is almost a sense of like professionalism. I don't know if you felt that around you, but there's like a posture to the way we express, you know, the hugs are sort of stiff and quick and dinner's on time. And there just is a sort of systematic way of navigating even the home life that was in my family growing up very much. And I think the way that my dad showed love or expected that we showed love to him even was to get straight A's, to be on time. Early is on time is late is unacceptable was sort of like a phrase that was drilled into my brother and mine. That was how we earned love, was sort of like rising to the occasion in our lives outside of the home.
Interesting. So what did the conversations or the interactions look like then inside the home?
I would say our dinners were like pretty quiet. My dad was there as often as he could be, but he was a lawyer at like a big firm in Cleveland, worked downtown. And so when we were able to have dinner as a family, it was often sort of like a task to complete so that we could go back and do our homework, or it wasn't a ton of like unpacking our days or like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Certainly. I don't remember being asked that question a lot growing up. And then because kind of back to that military structure, my dad was sort of winning the bread, and then my mom was raising us largely. And my mom also comes from a pretty complex childhood home environment. And so there just wasn't a lot of vocabulary or just opportunity to explore how we were feeling. And that's been a big part of my unpacking, uncovering journey as an adult, is figuring out how to make space for how I feel, even when, and especially when it's uncomfortable, like feelings like sadness and anger. There just was not a place or like a way to kind of get into those spaces as a family. So those are things that my brother and I, even now, those are emotions or ways of feeling that I think we struggle with, especially with like how to express them in a way that is constructive, or not put a mask on them, or not, palletize them or soften them. Or something I'm learning in therapy that I do a lot is kind of qualify them. Like, I feel this way, but it's okay. And it's mostly my problem. And, sort of backing out of complicated emotions. So that's a lot of what growing up was like. I think things being sort of simple and structured, and anything outside of that is not really,
like, there's not room for it.
There's not room for it. There's not room for it.
Do you think that that's a critique that your dad would have of his own childhood?
I think that's absolutely fair. I think that's also true of my mom's childhood. I think they really did do the best they could with what they had. So I don't think, and actually, I think those are both individuals who worked really hard to try to consciously not integrate some of the things that they had when they were growing up into our family home. Like, I think had my mom and dad not done the work that they did, it would be a whole different level of unpacking. And to give credit to my dad, especially, like, he is a man who all through his life continues, into his 60s, to unpack and be curious about how much of his actions and reactions are products of his actual emotional life and how much of them are carried over from the past. And staying curious that late in life is so difficult, no matter who you are. So I give him a lot of credit that we can still do so much healing now. It really never is too late. And it took an extraordinary amount of bravery for him to come out in his 50s to his family. And he continues to exercise that bravery now. My mom is the same way. So I give them so much credit.
Yeah, I come from two parents who also come from really challenging upbringings, and who would both say, I don't want to have the same type of environment for my family. And they've been together 32 years now. And they say that that's what kept them together, was this kind of feeling of, we want to create something different.
Wow.
And we want to be different. And sometimes I don't think I give them enough credit for that, because, you always look at your parents and you're like, oh, why couldn't you have done this or done that?
Of course.
But it is truly amazing. Like, they didn't know, and they didn't have the information and the access to information like we do now. So it is impressive. But I do think that is one critique, the curiosity. Sometimes I'm like, oh, why can't we have more of that? And why can't we do a little bit more, like, reaching into our childhood to see why we are this way or why we have these reactions. So to hear that your parents have that is like, that truly is all you can ask of somebody.
I think so. And I think about all the time how we are one of the first generations where a large majority, I mean, especially in Southern California, but a large majority of us are either going to therapy or like are on the self-help journey or are like actively, like it is not a taboo to say that you are in therapy, you are in couples therapy. It's not something you kind of keep to yourself. Like many people are engaged in that work. And I know there's a lot we're going through right now, but I think that is going to be instrumental in how we get through these times of like incredible turbulence, is that many of us are doing that work and have tools that just our parents, like you said, did not have.
Yeah.
But that's interesting that your parents were like deeply, like their love was like rooted in this idea of being change makers and being different. But there still are some, do you feel like they have a fear of like, maybe like looking at the wounds that they might have unintentionally caused you growing up? Where is the line for them?
I think that my parents gave their entire life to their kids. They've never had like a big life outside of our family. Every ounce of focus was poured into me and my siblings. So I think the minute you start to critique that, it's like, ooh, because they don't want to be their parents, you know, and they don't, and I see that, and they're not, and they've, you know, they're incredible. But I think it's just like, that's too much, you know, and they can't take the feedback, and that's okay. And I get that. But sometimes it's like, to move forward, I think conversations like that are important. And I find myself sometimes not able to say certain things or voice certain things because of those wounds. And now as an adult, I see that that's why. But when you're a kid, you have no idea. So I was the dramatic one, or the, you know, I'm too this, or I'm too that, or I'm too much, or because I was the one, I'm always analyzing feelings and analyzing the vibe. And I'm really vigilant, because when I walk into the room, I'm seeking out, okay, who feels like this, and you aren't feeling right, and something's not right. And so it was almost like, I know something is wrong. I feel the vibe. But then when it's brought to the surface, it's like, what are you talking about? You know? So it's this constant thing of, am I fucking crazy? You know?
It feels like you crawled into my heart and like put a microphone on it. And like, that is absolutely my experience as well. And especially that feeling of like those negative emotions being too much, being disruptive, being uncalled for, because that was absolutely me. And that's what I'm working on now, is like trying to follow the through line of those flags or feelings that bubble up, and trying to give them the space to breathe and be seen and heard, at least in my own internal space. Because I have this mechanism of shoving those things down, because I was labeled the same thing. And even now in my relationship with my brother, like, I think he feels often like he's nervous that I'm gonna pop off or start crying, because he remembers me doing that as a kid, and the way that it like ruined the family vacation, or the way that it made my parents very upset, and now we know, uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I was pointing to this feeling of like, something is not right. And especially with my parents' relationship, you know, they're not together anymore. And I think that they were always good teammates, but probably never in love in the way that we now understand it to be, you know, probably never meant to be partners in the way that we now understand that, the dynamics of that relationship. And I think I always knew that. And so I think part of what I was doing to make my parents uncomfortable, I think, was pointing out that something is not quite right. Something's up.
Yeah. And when you're gaslit, it teaches you to deny these instinctual feelings that are survival instincts.
That's right.
And so, you know, at this point in my life, I feel myself, I cannot take a lot of external feedback, because for so long I relied on external feedback because I was told your gut feelings are not correct.
That's right.
So I'm reaching everywhere else to look for, okay, well, this is what actually is going on. This is what actually is going on. So now I'm disconnected from my internal meter, relying on outer opinions and feelings. So as an adult now, who is consciously aware of what was going on in my childhood, too much external feedback now overwhelms me because it drowns out my connection to my instincts.
You feel, I mean, you are mirroring me in this way. That is very validating and cool to talk about.
Did we just become best friends?
No, really. I would love to talk about this more because, and it also, it seems like you're a bit ahead of the game from where I am because I have not yet, it's much better than it was, but I have not yet like formed this union with my inner self where I feel like I can trust and rely on her fully. It's getting stronger and stronger. But I still go into the room and feel most comfortable kind of being a mirror to everybody else and kind of the hypervigilance thing, trying to match and anticipate people's needs or what I think they want me to be and then be that thing so that I can win acceptance and not be rejected. And I'm still moving through the world in that way. And I still have to kind of like do that exercise in the car whenever I get anywhere that's like, okay, like, this is where I am. This is where I'm feeling. And I don't have to perform in any way other than the truth of where I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finding affordable, accessible mental health care can be really tough. And even though we try to spread the knowledge through what are you working on in therapy, sometimes you just need your own space with someone to talk about your specific needs. And Rula is on a mission to make high quality mental health care from a licensed professional easy and affordable for everyone. They take most major insurance, and the average copay is only $15 per session. Rula works with a network of over 10,000 therapists and psychiatrists nationwide, enabling you to find your personalized solution and your right therapist based on your preferences and your state requirements. Thousands have already trusted Rula to support them in their overall journey toward mental health and well-being. Head on over to rula.com/made to get started today. And after you sign up, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that our show sent you. Go to rula.com/made and take the first step towards better mental health today. You deserve quality care from someone who cares. There are some things in life that are totally okay to be a crapshoot. Trying a new type of milk in your coffee, an impulse buy off of an Instagram ad, or trying a new takeout spot. But finding the right doctor should not be a crapshoot. And with ZocDoc, it's not, because you have more options than you know. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for you and your needs, and click instantly to book an appointment. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care to skincare, and much more. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. Sometimes you can even score same-day appointments. I recently used ZocDoc for a little rash that I had on my face, and it was so fast and so easy. I recommend it to literally everyone. Stop putting off your doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/made. Find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/made, ZocDoc.com/made. Okay, I want to get back to your dad.
Yes.
Now that I kind of understand like what your home was like and what his upbringing was like, what was his career journey?
I know the bits and pieces, and it's something that we still have to like dive into. I think he and I think it's something that he always knew about himself, but never got the chance to explore until after he finished law school. And I remember him telling me he went on like a work retreat after he'd gotten his job at his first law firm in Cleveland. And they were like a bunch of dudes like in something like an Airbnb, like drinking and playing a drinking game. And I think the alcohol and the disarming and the sort of being away from his past, his present, his family, where he like had this moment where he was like able to explore it once and was like, oh, for sure, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And So that's, you know, at least in his 30s. I can't fully confirm, but that's pretty far down the road when he's like actually like physically manifesting this thing that he's known and held true, like very much in the corner of his life thus far. And so I think then when he got back from that trip, he connected with a guy that was like sort of peripherally in our like friend and family group, and started to kind of explore a relationship with him.
And at this point, how long had him and your mom not been together, or are they still together?
They're not still together, but they were still married. So it was a moment of unfaithfulness, but it was, you know, all of that is in quotations because in some ways it's the first time he was faithful to his inner world.
Totally.
Not to take away the pain that my mom went through at all. But I think there was like a sort of breaking open that happened that ultimately I think as a family we're all thankful for, even though it was so painful for everybody. But also in a kind of like Phoenix Rising way, like in a sense of rebirth for everyone. So,
and did you know that any of this was, I mean, I know you said you were picking up on stuff, but did you consciously know of anything yet?
No, only on the spidey sense level, truly.
Yeah.
My mom and my dad decided to keep it away from my brother and I. I think this was when I was around 12, 13. And they decided that they wanted to like see us through off to college and then they would let us know. And that's kind of exactly what happened. As soon as my brother had committed to university, we sat down as a family that Thanksgiving and he told my brother and me individually. And he did just this, which is like, he kind of outlined his queer journey. And interestingly, my dad doesn't love the word queer. I think that's a generational thing. The reclamation, you know, was not a part of his growing up, but he really does not resonate with that word. And he let us know that a couple of years back. I thought that was interesting, but he kind of came out to each of us and told us this journey. He was like very candid about that night at that work trip and the relationships thereafter. And his partner, Tony, who he's now with and lives with, actually, he's moving to Palm Springs with him.
Oh, love it.
I know.
That's like the gay dream, I think.
Well, you know, there's like kind of two of them, Fort Lauderdale and Palm Springs. And he's in Fort Lauderdale now. And he was like, okay, cute, but I'm going to try. It's just like,
I love it.
Where can I thrive? Which I love.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's going to be cool to be an hour and a half away from each other. And like, he doesn't love drag, but I'm working on it.
Okay.
So we're going to go to drag brunches and we're going to get it together.
I love it. So what did this mean for your queer journey?
Yeah. So funnily enough, I was like pretty closeted growing up.
Okay.
Like I've had relationships with people of all sorts of gender identities. So I myself am still like looking for a definition. I love the word queer because it sort of holds it all. But I had connections with men, women, non-binary folks, trans folks, because I was in the theater community. And so I was blessed to have a whole community of people who were just colorful, you know? And when you're younger too, you don't necessarily have the words for it or need them yet. And in certain households and environments. And I was lucky to be in at least a community outside of school where that was the case. And it was just about who you connected to and related to, and there were no further questions asked. That
was always the messaging in your family.
It was the messaging in my like theater family, I would say, in my like chosen family. In the home, I was never really. I mean, I had like a little boyfriend in 7th grade, and my parents kind of like knew that and felt whatever about it because we would like walk to the movie theater in my like Gap sweatshirt and then I'd come right home. Like it was it was not juicy. So I think they knew I was like a pretty studious kiddo and they weren't too worried because I was not very cool. They were like, great. Nothing to worry about. But I think in my sort of chosen family outside of the nuclear family, there was really there weren't these sort of like boundaries or these expectations about who you were supposed to like or love or crush on and what that said about you reflectively.
Yeah.
But something I'm still navigating is this internalized feeling of not being queer enough to like to be honest, like this is the first time I'm really publicly speaking about my queerness on like a formal platform.
Oh my gosh, thank you for allowing it to be us.
No, well, you know, it was really you guys, because I remember you came onto the reproductive freedom bus and you were like, any lesbians in here? And it was silent. And I was embarrassed. I was like, come on, y'all. So I was like, all right. And I was like, I mean, I'm queer. And y'all were like, yes. And it was this small moment that was like actually deeply affirming, like truly. Like, and then when like we were leaving the bus, y'all were like, we'd love to have you on the podcast. And like part of me panicked because I was like, I'm not as queer. Like, I'm not as cool. I probably shouldn't have even said anything. Like, I don't know if I'm enough for that space. But something in me was just like, you know what? Like, y'all seemed incredibly lovely, open-spirited, affirming. And then when I took a dive on your podcast, that is absolutely the energy. Aww. ER is like a dear friend of mine. I was just like, okay, I think if like there's a place and time to even come on the show and be like, hey, I'm not sure. Like, what the word is for me, if I am enough to like occupy these spaces, what do y'all think? Like, I think if there's a place to have that conversation and maybe offer it to folks who are feeling that way themselves, it would be with y'all. So
oh my God,
just know
I love
that.
you for that. Thank you.
For real. Thank you.
I also think that that's what this is about.
Right.
I think in so many ways, that is why I didn't come out until I was 28, was because I just didn't see anybody that looked like me, talked like me, acted like me, that was proud to be, for me, gay.
That's
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
And so I think it's just showing a different type of queer person. We're all just people. We all are just people, and we happen to be queer, you know?
That's the thing. And one of the most fundamental things about being a human creature is that you are going to change. And I think it's super interesting that like part of what helps you identify in terms of like your gender orientation or your sexual orientation is who you relate to or who you are attracted to, because that is so sort of outside of you in a way. And also that person could change. Like, you could think you are in love with a man who then discovers that they actually might relate more to feminine energy and then transitions. And then what does that then say about your sexuality? You know, like it's so interdependent how we define who we are, which is to say the definitions just feel sort of null and void at this point in a way that I think is so beautiful and encouraging.
Wow.
You know, I and that's what I love so much about the word queer, again, is like it is like an ever expansive sort of container, which is just to say like you can be embraced here if you want to be embraced here.
Yes.
And that is kind of the end of it, you know?
Oh my God, I love that. I've never heard it expressed that way. And I've talked to a lot of people on this couch. So thank you. Your opinions and your perspective is so important. And I think it's amazing that you're sharing it and you can say these things out loud. And because there's so many people, I guarantee it, that will get DMs from saying, oh my God, I feel this exact same way. So it's always so important. And I think that's why we do what we do, is, you know, to show these nuances and intricacies of being queer.
So cool. Thank you for doing this.
Oh my God, I love it. When did you come to realize that you are queer? That's the word that you're comfortable with, and share that with your family.
Those probably happened in two different stages. I think when I realized I was queer, I was pretty young, like probably fifth grade. I remember like having a crush on a girl and like hanging out with her and like kissing at a play date, you know, you know how it goes.
Of course.
And then that just sort of like continued through my life, where in college, again, like, yeah, I would date trans folks, non-binary folks, like all sorts of folks. And actually then when I started working at the Trevor Project, that was like one of my sort of survival jobs, which ended up being a survival job on a very deep level. That's another place where like we had to do a several week-long training before you can become like a phone counselor. I could have just walked away from the training having had like tools as like a human being navigating the world that would have changed my life. Like before I even got on the phone with anyone for the first time, which is a whole nother level. But the way that you learn how to hold space and use words that, again, are expansive and not limiting. It's as simple as that. But like a turn of phrase can make someone either feel safe and like held or somehow categorized and judged.
Wow.
And learning verbiage that is, or just a way of expressing that is open-ended and curiosity oriented as opposed to advice giving. You know, it's like a interesting crossover between sort of like tools you learn, I think, as a therapist and also just like being a friend to someone in a more casual sense. And because we're not licensed therapists, so much of the work is just about affirmation and question asking, really. And how interesting just affirmation and question asking, how powerful that is alone. And just if we could relate to each other that way all the time, it would be a different planet. I'm very sure of that.
Who teaches those trainings?
It's Trevor's staff, like the sort of senior staff. And a lot of the programming was developed by the founder, Celeste Lacine, who also is a theater maker and is a friend of mine. And I've worked with them on developing a musical that they wrote and directed, and they're a performer themselves. And they had first made a short film actually about a kid named Trevor and the tragic end to his story when he was not accepted by his parents and felt that he needed to take his own life, which is enormous and unfortunately not uncommon in our community. And so it came from one kid's story. And I think it's so beautiful that the whole organization is made in his name and in his honor, because it sort of directly parallels their whole framework and philosophy, which is that every single individual and their story is an opportunity to make seismic change for the human community. So the training is very much rooted in that, like seeing each individual and making space for their story to change, because that's also what happens a lot on the phone is like you learn one thing in 15 minutes, but in 45 minutes and an hour, you learn the root cause of a lot of their pain. Or, you know, it takes time for people to feel safe to bloom in front of you, in front of themselves.
Yeah.
And that's really what the phone is about. Keeping them safe, number one priority. And then after that, it's like just creating spaciousness for self-affirmation.
For a lot of people who probably have not been given that kind of care and love before. So that's absolutely incredible. What drew you to that work?
It was really my dad, because I remember after he came out to us, I had a couple more years of college, but I spent a lot of that time thinking about what his childhood must have been like, even more deeply from his perspective. You know, I saw what I saw when I would go back home to Texas. And again, a loving family, a very like caretaking family in its way. But I certainly got like a taste and sense of what must have been challenging and disruptive to his personal development and self-love practice, you know, and how there just wasn't one or the room for one or the knowledge that there could be one.
Yeah.
And how important it is and not woo, you know? So then I volunteered for Trevor first because I thought, like, what if there had been a like divine intervention tool like this to like say, hey, I totally get where you're at. And like, even if you are on the phone right now in a literal closet with like pillows under the door so that your parents can't hear you, but you can say to me, this is who I am. Like, that is like a life-changing 15-minute, 30-minute phone call. And like, if my dad had had that phone call, it might have changed the entire course of his life.
Yeah.
And so I think I remember like Googling if that resource even existed and then finding Trevor and then seeing they were in New York and did the training, volunteered, and then ended up being hired as a crisis worker. And it was just such a sort of one-to-one, but it really, really came from thinking about how in our, because we are in a time where technology is developed in such a way that we can connect with people all over the world in an instant, like how can we use that for good? You know?
Had you said out loud yet that you are queer?
I don't think
at this point?
had.
Wow.
No.
Wow.
And actually, I think because we have to use code names on the phone too. So my code name was Riley at the time. I don't know why I loved Riley. But Riley was like out and like that was a cool exercise for me too. Like I got to kind of embody like even the way that I feel sort of fluid about gender inside of myself. And like I think I got to practice saying out loud as Riley, like, I'm queer, like, what's up? Tell me about yourself. Like not even making it a big deal.
Yeah.
So it gave me so much.
Like an outlet.
An outlet to actually be even more myself than I really was in the public facing space, which at the time I was so broke and had like only done backyard theater. So it wasn't like I really had that kind of like platform at all yet, but I still just like did not yet feel queer enough to lead with that. Mm-hmm. So that's the other exercise that it gave me was like building the muscle of just saying it,
Like how poetic and beautiful is it that you were giving so much and it was giving so much right back to you? I mean, that's absolutely incredible.
That's the thing about this space is like it works on this like continuum where the more you take care of yourself, and that's what we always try to encourage for our callers too, is like you keeping yourself safe tonight is like a ripple effect action that makes so much more space for kids all over the country, all over the world to be themselves and want to take care of themselves. And like your thriving is like actual medicine for somebody else, like it really does work together.
Wow. When you came out to your family, was your dad surprised? How did he take it? How did that change like y'all's relationship?
With both because I kind of did it with my dad and my mom separately. And in both cases, it was like a holiday dinner where like everybody was like 3.5 glasses of wine in. And I just sort of like said it like, and then like took a sip. Like, so it was, and both my dad and my mom were kind of like, okay. And then my dad was a little bit like, so do you have like a special friend? And I was like, special friend? Come on now. I'm like 25. But yes. So it got to be very casual in both circumstances. My mom, I remember feeling maybe a little bit more surprised and quieted by it. I remember her saying, okay, but that's sort of it. Uh-huh. And I think part of that is I remember on a drive like home from some rehearsal or something, her saying that she had just found out that it was either a cousin or a coworker was bisexual. And I remember her saying, that must be so confusing. I feel really bad for them. Like that must be really, really hard because you never know what you want. And I remember that landing on me and being like, oh, I never thought about it that way, or it doesn't feel that way to me. At the time, I think that's how I was thinking about my identity. And I remember it. And I remember this voice in my head being like, we probably can't talk to mom about this stuff. Cause it felt a little bit like she was like sorry for the person in like a kind of, looking down way.
Interesting.
And then I do remember, and I also think that her reaction might have also been because my dad was actually the second man in her life who had come out and had a relationship with a man that she wasn't aware of.
I was literally about to ask, do you think part of her reaction was wounding from?
I think so.
I mean, I don't know how it couldn't be.
And even if like intellectually and emotionally that is not how she feels about me or, the community at large, I think they're just like maybe wasn't impulsive because it was familiar, and also revealing it sort of after knowing her for 25 years. And like, maybe there just was this sense of like, can I trust, or like, you know, like how do I know who people are, or I don't know, but
I think that's so fair. I think even with my parents, who I've always known, like, this will not be a thing. It will be okay. Like, they will accept me. They will not look at me different. I think a big part of the hurt there is them thinking that they knew me. And then 28 years later being like, oh, actually, there's this huge thing that you didn't know about me. So I'm sure it's like maybe that wound or that same like feeling that
coming up, right?
Just like a trigger.
Yes, exactly. It's like what we were saying earlier, where you can get feedback from somebody that you love and trust and know is like always open to your emotional landscape, but it triggers this, like, you're trying to make me something that I'm not, or you're trying to mute something that needs to be said within me, even though that is not at all where the train was coming from.
Totally. We're all just mirrors.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's fucking exhausting.
It's so hard. It's so hard.
But you're all in a good space, it sounds like. Everybody's out.
Everybody's out. Everybody, you know, I will shout out to my brother, Eric. I think he, being the youngest too, has had maybe the most challenging, and it's not even related at all to the sort of queer identity stuff, but just, I think the sort of like militarization and like structuring of your inner life and landscape to be excellent at all things all the time. I think that has been incredibly internalized. And I think he's had one of the hardest times kind of letting go of that. And I think it kind of invades the peacefulness of his life the most, without putting his stuff too much on blast. But I just shout out to my brother, because I think his healing journey has been one of the hardest. And, you know, I think it can show up in so many ways, mentally, physically, and emotionally. And he's working really hard to move through it, but it can really interrupt your life and livelihood and well-being when you distrust all of your impulses. And even when you're trying to write a text to a friend, you edit it for hours because you want it to be perfect and excellent always. And just kind of undoing perfectionism is, and now that we know perfectionism isn't real, it like really is this imposition on what is so naturally human, which is to be a thing that changes and makes mistakes.
And is flawed.
And is absolutely flawed. And even that's like a label, but really just like does shit different every day.
Especially in times like these, I feel like everything is unprecedented. Right. So who the fuck knows how I'm going to act tomorrow?
Yes.
I can't tell you.
How could I know? I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Which has always been the case, but we're confronted with it in such a different way.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting exploration of all the ways we perform, like, not just gender, but like all the ways we perform to fit the performance that equates success and the performance of success, you know.
Wow.
All of it's coming down right now. And we're so blessed for that. And also, you know. Yeah.
But I think that's what makes conversation and connection like this so important. And I could sit here and talk to you for literal days. I love this conversation. It's not at all where I expected it to go, but that is what makes me so happy, because they're the best episodes where it's kind of like, okay, we think we're going this way, but we've gone down so many beautiful rabbit holes. And I thank you for being so open and willing to come on and share.
Thank you. This is really to kind of sit in the presence of all of you and just be relaxed and open about the truth of who I am, and hope that it just offers someone else affirmation if they're questioning, confused, excited about being confused, you know, that I've been there like yesterday and I'm still kind of there now. And thank you for making that feel like enough.
Of course. I have one more invasive question.
Yes.
What are you working on in therapy? I know this whole thing has kind of been like therapy, but
Actually, my therapist and I just had this like end of year review, which I've never done before. It's a new therapist.
I love this.
Very cool. I go to Kindman and Co. in Highland Park. They are like very queer and wonderful. I highlight it for anybody looking for space to dig deep. But she said this phrase. She said, I think we're working on the tool of you the other day. And I think what she was referring to is that sort of like internal impulse, like being plugged into that and like letting signs, like if I'm connecting with someone, but I notice that like my hand is clenching, like that might be a sign that like there is a part of me that doesn't feel safe to be fully seen.
Wow.
Or like if I notice that I'm like sitting a certain way or my voice is like pitched in a certain way. I have all these tools I use to be like always sunny all the time. And if I notice like my eyebrows are like past my forehead, like I'm probably putting on. And like, how can I like let the physical, back to yoga too, like how can I be aware enough in this like thing that is my body, like how can I be aware enough of how it is signaling to me that like we are performing for the comfort of those who we're interacting with, even if they didn't ask for a performance, but I am so sort of self-cued all the time to put on that, like how can we like from the physical place, like how can we start taking off layers and using my body as like a compass for how me I really am in a certain room, in a certain space, at a certain time.
Totally, because it's also one thing to be aware, but then to actually take that off is like another layer, because then it's the why. Why do I feel like I have to, or who am I trying to please, or
yes,
you know, and sometimes in those moments to take it off is like feels bare or something, or vulnerable.
So vulnerable. And what I like about, like, we're really doing it one layer at a time. So right now it's just about the awareness.
Okay.
And
I'm jumping ahead.
No, but that is the next step. Yeah. And I'm sort of edging up to it, but really like the taking off and the reflecting of it, I'm trying to do like at home with the journal for now. And especially the like who and why.
Yeah.
Like where did it happen? How did my body have the reaction? Why do I think that is? I can sort of do privately now. But yeah, weirdly, the one thing I'm trying to do in the moment is notice my body posture. And if I feel like I've been like sitting like this for like 4 hours, I'm probably not authentic. Yeah. So like put the leg down, girl, and just starting there.
All right, we play a game.
Okay.
It's called You Haul or You Ghost. No in between.
Okay.
Perfect in every way. And you're single right now, so these are things to consider.
Yeah, this is going to help me.
Yes.
Iron out the kinks.
Yes. Perfect in every way, but like maybe just this one little quirk. Okay. She refuses to fly anything but first class, but she doesn't buy your ticket, and she'll be like, bye, we'll be seeing ya.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. That's a U-Haul, because that's a little bit me. Except, no, tickets on me. But I'm not gonna lie to you. I love the free snacks. I love getting on, getting off.
I know the presents they give you.
I'm not gonna, the little like,
the lotions.
Like Mister, the little like, yeah.
It is very nice.
I love it.
I will say this does not bother me.
Okay.
I'm not a plane snob whatsoever.
Okay.
I will fly. I used to be with a pilot for a long time, so I was always on standby.
Yes.
And it's like, I'm just lucky to be on the plane.
Right.
So I'm not really, I'll fly Spirit.
Okay. Wow. And that is so grounded and mature of you. My whole family flies Spirit, and I am that girl. I don't know when this happened to me. I think I just the first time I did it, it was like last year. And I was like, I don't know if I can go back.
Okay. What about you go back to her apartment?
Okay.
Perfect in every way.
Okay.
But this is her bed set up.
What am I? Chili's. I might love it.
It's kind of funny to me.
I might love it.
It's funny to me.
Also, it's clean. Like that is like
You made your bed.
made it. Sheets are washed. Loves Chili's?
Loves Chili's.
Yeah, I can hang with that. That's a U-Haul. Let's go.
I think it's so funny. Like maybe at some point we have to retire it or move it to the guest bedroom.
That's true.
But I appreciate it.
And if we're open to that, it can stay.
Yes. I appreciate the commitment to the things that you love.
Yes. And the like unashamedness.
Yes.
Like this is my shit.
This is my head.
This is who I am.
Those are wings on the pillows. That's a cheeseburger on the other pillow.
I love it.
Okay. Another like interiors are really a thing with me.
Okay, cool.
You go back to her place and she collects bunny stuff. Like bunny art, bunny mugs, bunny cups, bunny statues, bunny tchotchkes.
Statues
Really
is
likes
deep.
bunny.
Really likes bunnies.
Really likes bunnies.
Really likes bunnies.
Perfect in every way. But she just has this like kind of like fixation on bunnies.
You know, the trick here is the perfect in every way. Because if this is like quirk number 5, I'm like, but
This is strike number 1.
and possibly only.
And possibly only. Like,
I think I could make that work. I could think I could U-Haul that. No, are you like absolutely not?
I am so out.
Is it because it's bunnies or is it because a fixation of that size and kind?
I think what really gets me is the aesthetics of it all.
Okay, yeah.
I cannot walk into my home
And
and
it's
bunnies. It's a bunny museum.
okay, so it can't be consolidated to like a home in the house. It's like,
And maybe, okay, fine. Even if it's like not that much.
yeah.
If there's like only bunny art or something,
okay,
like if it's a lot of bunny art, it is just kind of like,
Okay.
what are we going? But even if it's a beautiful home,
Yeah.
and then it's just bunnies.
I guess you might be right. It's kind of like, have you ever stayed at like an Airbnb in Big Bear?
Yes.
And it's like Christmas all year and bears
Yes.
everywhere and like antler. And
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Now that you say that.
Or that, right? Like the Airbnbs that have any theme.
True.
They're like, we really committed. We're going coastal, and we really committed.
And it's like every chair is a seashell.
Yes,
And you're
yes,
like,
yes.
okay, but I
Coral
can't.
bedspreads. It's just like
You might be right. You might be right.
tacky.
Yeah, and for the rest of your life.
No.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Did I
You convinced
convince
me.
you?
It's a ghost. It's a ghost. Thank you for getting me out now. You know?
I love when I
Before fell
heavily
in love.
sway someone. Like, no.
You're like, you're wrong. And I was right. I mean, you were right. I was wrong.
Thank you for playing.
I love it. I love it.
Wow. I absolutely love you.
too.
I am just so happy you've been here. Can you tell people where they can find you?
Yes, I'm on that Instagram thing at Alexis G. Floyd, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
And I'm not on there a ton, but I'm also popping up on Grey's Anatomy on Thursday nights. And I've got some music out in the world that is on all the streaming platforms. So come hang out anywhere, anytime.
I love it. Thank you again.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode. As always, help us spread the gay agenda by writing an Apple review, rating us on Spotify, and sharing with everyone you've ever met. And if you haven't yet, join our subscription community, Made It In, for exclusive Made It Out media shows, content, and chat rooms at madeitout.supercast.com. Made It Out is produced by Matilde Jordan and worked on solely by lesbians.
White coats whisper close. Fingers trace forbidden charts. Pulse quickens. Exposed.
Love the way you said quite.
I had to start there. You know?